May 10, 2018. A multitude of earthquakes hits the French island of Mayotte. Some register higher than 5 on the Richter scale. Unheard of.
We're not in a volcanically active zone. There's been no volcanic activity in Mayotte for several thousand years. So there's no active volcano, and suddenly we start recording a considerable number of earthquakes off the island's coast at great depth. And we don't really know what's going on.
Close to 1,800 tremors in just a few weeks. Panic grips the population.
There was no particular reason for large tectonic earthquakes. So in May 2018, when we see a 5.9 magnitude quake, we don't understand. And the aim was to find out the origin of this earthquake. Is it of tectonic origin or volcanic origin?
It was only after a while, when we began doing bathymetric surveys, we started trying to take a closer look. We realized that there was a major phenomenon happening, and these earthquakes, in fact, came from the fracturing of rocks on the ocean floor and the rise of magma.
All eyes are on the east of Mayotte, towards the sea. That's where the epicenter of all the earthquakes seems to be concentrated. The number of field expeditions increases, and scientists eventually find the explanation for this phenomenon. More than 3,000 meters below the surface of the Indian Ocean. An extraordinary discovery.
Yes, there's a volcano there.
It seems like a very broad system. There's no doubt about it.
We were far from imagining, before carrying out oceanographic campaigns, sending in submarines and sensors to see what's happening, that we would discover a new territory, or rather, a new volcano.
That's incredible. Did you see how high it went?
It's incredible. Look. That means it's being emptied of gas.
There's an awful lot of undersea volcanic activity on Earth. But what is exceptional is to see the birth of an underwater volcano of this type, and to see it grow so quickly and with such significant flow rates.
Its name, Mayotte. A gigantic undersea volcano burst from the depths barely 50 kilometers off the coast of Mayotte. In just 1 year, it grew to 800 meters above the ocean floor and extended over more than 12 kilometers.
You have to see that in 2018, there was almost nothing. And today you have a cone 800 meters high at a depth of 3,500 meters. In other words, that's 6 cubic kilometers of lava in the space of 3 years. And that is absolutely colossal. So we're at 400 cubic meters per second, so that's 3 times more than the famous 2007 eruption of Piton de la Fournaise. You have to realize that.
With such quantities of magma, the underwater eruption of Mayotte becomes the largest emission of lava on the planet in almost 3 centuries. The volume of lava emitted would be enough to cover the entire city of Paris with a layer of ash 20 meters deep. A colossal eruption, completely invisible from the surface, despite the existence of a gigantic underwater plume.
If I'd been told I'd see this once in my life.
Same here. What we represent here on this 3D digital model are echoes in the water column generated by the fluids escaping from the volcano. So there we have the largest plume coming out from the crater of the volcano, which is the highest point, which appears in red here. And that corresponds to the bubbles, the hot fluids that can escape from the crater.
We are at 3,500 meters from that spot, and we have a gas plume that rises 2,000 meters. So that's something exceptional that hasn't been seen, hasn't been observed, at any rate.
The volumes of expelled magma are such that the island of Mayotte would even shift during this eruption. 25 centimeters eastwards in all. And more serious, it has sunk almost 20 centimeters into the ocean.
You simply have the emptying of the magma chamber, which is also located at great depth, which is quite atypical, between 20 and 30 kilometers deep under the island of Mayotte. And this emptying is done, also atypically, via a dike, a conduit about 50 kilometers to the surface, to the east of Mayotte.
The magma chamber could be compared to a balloon, which is filled, and Mayotte, which is placed on top. And as this balloon deflates, Mayotte will move and sink at the same time.
Could the island experience an unprecedented cataclysm following the emptying of this magma chamber? The scientific community is holding its breath.
What we fear is the collapse of the zone, because that would be accompanied by a movement of water, and therefore the formation of a tsunami.
Remember, too, that Mayotte's slopes are very steep, and with a series of earthquakes and stronger seismicity, there's also the fear of landslides on the slopes.
And the scientists still have surprises in store, because follow-up missions in the area won't just uncover one underwater volcano, but several hundred, which carpet a strip of the ocean floor over 600 kilometers long by 200 kilometers wide.
We don't really understand why this volcanism is focused here. There are lots of spots on Earth where we don't really know why there is volcanism. It means we're going to have to monitor this a little more closely.
Some imagine we may have something breaking through that was not known before. Others imagine that it is perhaps a new plate boundary being created. It's currently being studied, but what's clear is that it is an extremely important phenomenon.
And that's not all. On the seabed, just 10 kilometers from the coast of Mayotte, there are these rising gases which are worrying. Could a new eruption be imminent at the bottom of the abyss? And much closer to the island this time?
There are still earthquakes. There are still gas fumes and rising fluids, so it's important to continue monitoring this area to see what happens next.
This outgassing activity suggests that there's still magma deep in the process of degassing, and therefore the possibility of activity, either at the level of Mayotte or elsewhere around Mayotte.
With Mayotte, France has witnessed the birth of the fourth active volcano on its territory, proving that a new volcano can always be born anytime, anywhere. This puts France at the top of the list of countries most at risk of volcanic eruption. No French overseas territory is immune. Réunion, Mayotte, Guadeloupe, and Martinique. Each of these French islands is holding its breath in anticipation of the next eruption. For each of these territories placed under very close surveillance, the key question is, will we be able to anticipate the disaster sufficiently to evacuate the population and thus save as many lives as possible?